Well, you've probably heard of PPP and ERC. These are big programs, but did you know that there's hundreds of other programs available for small and mid-sized companies? Well, over the next few minutes, we're going to talk about exactly that. We'll start with ERC, which maybe you've taken it, maybe you haven't, maybe you've heard you don't qualify, or maybe you're here because you want to know if it's a good idea. But regardless of ERC, you don't want to turn your back on the hundreds of other programs that Congress has made available. Now, let me give you a few quick stats. 2.3 trillion. That's the amount that Congress has made available for businesses just like yours. 23. That's the number of years we've been providing tax incentives. While PPP and ERC may be new, tax incentives for your business are not. 37 billion. That's the amount we found our clients over the last 23 years. But the most important number that you need to know is zero. That's the number of IRS disallowances we've had in the last 23 years, which means when we tell you that you're going to get money, you can bank on it. Now, unlike other fly by night companies that have jumped into the game just because there's a few programs out, we've been doing this for decades for some of the smallest and largest companies in the country. Now, over the next few minutes, we'll talk about what types of programs there are, who qualifies, and how much you can expect to get. We'll start with ERC, and then we'll tell you about all the other programs that are available for you. Now, for that, I want to bring in my co-host for this session. Kendra, let's talk about what is ERC, who qualifies. I heard is that every business gets $26,000 no matter what.
You and everybody else, to be honest.
Yeah.
Ryan, I think that ERC has been both a blessing and a curse. And it's been a blessing because it has been hugely impactful for businesses that qualified, and they've saved them through COVID, like literally. That's what it was designed for. But because it had such a high financial impact, what happened was it created this sea of pop-up organizations that are trying to piggyback off of this credit, make themselves rich in the process. And they're out there telling businesses that they automatically qualify. And they've submitted clients for claims that clearly don't qualify, which has created a huge controversy over the credit. Now, do you automatically get $26K for each employee? No. Could you qualify for a significant credit? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's a key word there, Ryan, and that's qualify.
Well, there's two. There's up to 26,000 and eligible. So those are two different things. And this is why you can't work with a pop-up provider. You need to be working with someone from the tax industry. Could be us, could be, someone else that you have a trusted relationship with.
Honestly, you just need to work with an organization that knows what questions to ask, what documentation to review, and what your actual credit should be. And as Ryan mentioned a few minutes ago, we've been in the industry for 23 years.
Yeah. So Kendra, now ERC's been in the news quite a bit as of recent. So, is it canceled? Is it around? Can you still get it? Have people missed it? What is the state of ERC?
Well, in late September, the IRS did something kind of unprecedented, and they placed a moratorium on processing new claims.
Yeah.
They're backlogged, and that's much in response to those predatory companies who've been sending in claims that clearly don't qualify, and they're irritated, to be honest. So they've said, we're going to hold off on processing any new claims. You can still submit. That's fine. We'll take them. But once they're in a position where they feel like they can restart, they're going to start processing from who submitted first back. So we are continuing to process our clients as normal. We don't want to take the chance that they could potentially miss out on this credit. So we're still sending them in. They're still being accepted. We have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of people out there that need the credit. So we're continuing to do that.
Yeah, I think people need to understand, you don't want to wait until the IRS says we're accepting new, because as a provider, we have a lot of work to do. As you mentioned, we have to break down those payroll reports. We have to calculate your benefit. So if you wait, chances are we and other providers are at a backlog, and then we submit it and the IRS is at a backlog. So you're just waiting that much longer. So don't wait. But the one thing I do want to address, Kendra, is what about if somebody got one of those emails that says you qualify? It's from a pop-up provider. They booked their phone call. they got their free analysis. And then from there, maybe we're told they don't qualify. Should they just
Honestly,
take the word of that, or?
well, I'm going to base the answer to that question off of two clients that pop in my head. We have a manufacturing company that we're working with for some other credits, and we asked them about ERC, and they said, "Oh no, we don't qualify. Somebody already told us. The company already told us we don't qualify." And we actually are aware of their situation already because we're looking at things for another credit. And so we asked some questions, and they said, "Oh, but our manufacturing side stayed open." And we were told because our manufacturing side stayed open, we don't qualify. But their administrative side was completely shuttered.
Sounds like
Almost
partial
the
closure to me.
yeah.
Like,
So we took some time, we dug in deeper, we asked more questions, and come to find out they do have a partial qualification because of that. And
yeah,
then real quick, another client that we have, she's a psychologist office, multiple people that work there with her. And for some time, they weren't able to do their psych evals in person. But again, another company told her, you don't qualify. And they just moved on to the next. We dug in, we asked some questions. And although she doesn't get $26,000 for every one, she does actually have a pretty decent partial credit. So it's about asking those right questions, knowing what to ask, and knowing how to move you through that
yeah.
process.
Now, that's as much as we'll talk about ERC for today because, when you think PPP came out, it was a Band-Aid. It was meant to kind of patch up what was going on in the economy. And then when ERC started getting strong, this was more like an IV line where, it's meant to kind of hydrate American business, but it doesn't solve the problem. And we've been helping solve the problem for 23 years. And what the real solution is long-term sustainable programs. So Congress has $2.3 trillion available for small and mid-sized companies. And Kendra, so many businesses qualify for this and don't even realize it. What are
Absolutely.
some of the things that would cause a business to qualify for some of this $2.3 trillion?
Great question. Now, when I look at qualifications, I want to cast the widest net possible and work our way back from there. So I'll do that to answer your question. Basically, there's 6 things I want to mention. Hire at least 1 employee every year. Check. Do you own commercial property? Could you possibly have employees that manufacture a product or employees that perform technical tasks? Or even are you located or your employees located in some of these areas throughout the country that are designated as disaster areas? Now, that's a wide net, but if you potentially say yes to any one of those
So it's
individually,
not all of those, it's any
no,
of
it's
those.
independent, you have a potential credit and you should take a look at it.
Now, there's one I want to focus in on that catches my eye there. I think every business owner sees this first one and they say, wait a minute, hire at least 1 employee annually. I mean, I think almost
Yeah.
everybody meets that criteria. Kendra,
I
what's
did say wide
available?
net.
Yeah, what's available for a business that hires an employee every year?
Well, this is tied to the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, or WOTC, which many of you are probably familiar with. It's a federal incentive program. It encourages us to hire employees from specific target groups. The average benefit is 2,400. It can be up to 9,600 though. The interesting fact about WOTC is it's notoriously difficult to do. The process is extremely difficult, but whether you do it or not, about 20% of your new hires would qualify. So, for example, we had a auto dealership client of ours, 4 locations. They hired about 20 people per location per year. We're working with them on some of their property tax stuff. And we asked them about WOTC. And the administrator said, nope, we've done it in the past. It was difficult. It was just frustrating and resulted in no benefit. But we encourage them to try the system that we have. And currently, they're qualifying 6 to 7 at each of their locations annually, which is well above the national average. And their administrator was talking to one of my staff members the other day, and he really credits that with the high level of qualification to the system. He
Yeah.
said, with a system this simple to use, we're able to survey every single candidate before we're thinking about hiring, before we make a decision on the hire. So,
To my knowledge, we're the only platform in the country that uses an intelligent system to look and predetermine if an employee is likely to qualify. For most companies that do WOTC, they fill out a piece of paper, they send it into the agency, and 90 days later they find out if that person qualifies or not. We put the power in a company's hand to determine if that person's likely to qualify. We can do that because we have over 20 years worth of data on who qualifies and who doesn't. And Kendra, for this, the one you just named, 6 to 7 employees from each location, that's $80,000 every
Absolutely.
single year that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
Now, another one that caught my eye when you were talking about your wide net is employers who either employ manufacturing or people in technical that
Right.
perform a technical nature. So software, architectural, engineering, anything like that. So if someone has technical employees or manufacturing employees, what would they qualify for?
Well, that's the R&D tax credit. And again, this may be something you're familiar with. And the big assumption when we say the R&D tax credit is that average companies don't qualify. But I want to kind of give you a little bit of information on why that's not actually true. Back in 2015, the R&D tax credit, it's been around forever, like since the 80s, not forever, but since the 80s. But back in 2015, the PATH Act really changed the credit. It expanded the definition to include upwards of 60 different industries. So tons of companies that didn't qualify previously now do. In addition to that, the credit was made permanent. So there's over $14 billion annually that's claimed with this tax credit. And the interesting fact, over 42% of the companies that are claiming the credit make less than 5 million annually. So we're talking about everyday companies in our backyard, the backbone of our economy. That's what this credit was designed for.
Yeah. This is actually, I love this credit. This is where I got my start over 20 years ago. I'm in Michigan. We have manufacturing companies up and down every single street. There's these industrial parkways, and I would just go door to door. I would say, "Hi, I'm Ryan. I work with manufacturers here in Southeast Michigan, and I help find specialized tax credits." The incredible thing about this credit that most people don't realize, this is an annual credit. So every single year we're going to get that credit. I mean, I've a lot of my clients that I got over 20 years ago, they're still clients. We get them every single year. We get them a benefit. And so that's one of the things I just love about this credit.
And Ryan, it's so funny that you say that. We just processed a bunch of our annuals, and there were several dozen that have been with us for over 20 years. And it's great to see that. And I forgot to mention, it's a dollar for dollar offset against taxes owed or paid. You can get that money back. And another interesting thing, it's not just for these well-established companies that have been in
Oh yeah.
manufacturing only
Good
forever.
point. Startups as well.
Yeah, well, the good example, we just brought a client on board. They're brand new to the manufacturing space. They actually manufacture those small parts for vapes. Not smokers, I don't know, but those little. And we found out, we did some digging and some research. They just applied for some patents and things. And because of all of those things, they have a significant credit coming in the end of this year. And they're a startup company. So
Yeah.
it really just shows how wide of a type of company that can qualify for the R&D tax credit.
Now, a lot of these employers that we're talking about right now, they either own a commercial space, so a manufacturer that owns a building or two, or maybe it's a restaurant in a strip mall and they've highly customized their
Yeah.
space in order to do the work that they do. I saw you mention on there if someone owns or has renovated commercial property. So let's talk for a minute about what's available for them.
Right. And that would be cost segregation. And honestly, cost segregation is one of my favorite benefits that a client can receive, because the benefit to them is literally immediate, and it's cash flow influx to their business, which is usually what's needed. Cost segregation, really, it's a tax planning tool. It gives real estate investors or renovations a chance to accelerate the depreciation on their property. And in a nutshell, what that does is it reduces your federal and state tax liability. So that money is yours. You get to keep it and you can do whatever you want with it. And I just think it has a huge impact on the entire business, bottom line.
Yeah. Historically, we've always had companies, and I think of them as like the franchises, the big brands, things like that, that these are really good for. So
Mhm.
you think about like car dealerships, hotels, restaurants. These are groups that get a set of plans handed down to them. And they say, here's the new Ford, here's the new Holiday Inn. Somebody decided that you should spend millions of dollars changing your property. And that's been a real bread and butter for so long, as well as independents like medical offices, manufacturing facilities, apartment complexes. These are all great. There's a new trend now. And by the way, if you have one of those, that's great. Like that's the
Yes.
real bread and butter for this. Now, over the last few years, there's been a new category that we've started to see. And Kendra, talk about rentals for just a minute, Airbnbs, things like
Right.
that.
So, an example that comes to mind is a client we've been working with for years, and they just submitted their 12th property with us. And I just took a peek because I like to see kind of what's going on with, especially our long-term clients. And their last three properties have actually been like these hotel slash Airbnb properties. And so then I took a little dive in and talked to the team, and they said, absolutely, we're seeing these come in a lot more regularly now. So I just think it's really interesting how our industry and the ability to bring a benefit is also evolving with what's going on outside of that as far as new business types and things like that.
Yeah. Now, the last program we'll talk about today, before we show people how to calculate what they qualify for, are disaster credits. So, 28 states have been declared a disaster zone within the last 5 years. Now, think hurricane, think flood, think fire, think business disruption.
Yes.
Okay. And so, Kendra, for these, we've got a large portion. Now, you just have to have some operations in one of these disaster areas, and
Right.
you would qualify for some benefit.
Right. This one's not as well known. And honestly, they haven't actually added to the list. They used to add every couple years, but they haven't since COVID hit, but we expect that to change real shortly. So there's declared natural disaster or disaster areas across the country. In the little map, you can see it like those dark gray areas. And just an example, like we have a client, they're a restaurant, 3 locations. They were hit by Hurricane Florence. And when you're talking about disaster credits, a lot of different, not a lot, but there's like 3 different factors like your employees, your facility, and time down. And they were affected for 10 days. They still paid their employees, and some of their building had some damage. They ended up getting $45,000. Now, that has a huge impact on a business that's been shut down or shuttered or just experienced a disaster.
Yeah, so that's an example of 4 programs. There are hundreds of programs available, but really a good way to look at this, if you're an employer or you're a commercial property owner, there's a really good chance that there's a tax incentive for you. So we've developed what we call the tax management system. Originally, this was a platform to track work opportunity tax credit, where all the states were and where the credits were. What we found is that most small and mid-sized companies don't have an HR platform. So they were using our WOTC platform at the time to store resumes of applicants, to store, information about their locations, to upload employee documents like W-2s and driver's licenses and things like that. So what we did was over time, we listened to our clients. We built a full HR platform that in the background is constantly looking for tax incentives. Think of us like the QuickBooks of tax incentives, and that's really what the tax management system has become.
It really is, Ryan. I love to see the evolution of this. It became something we didn't know was needed, but in that process became something even better. And the
Yeah.
ability to utilize something in your everyday business that allows you to track and claim your tax incentives and credits on a continuous basis didn't exist until the tax management system.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure what people really want to know, I'm going to have you off the stream in 60 seconds. You want to know how much you qualify for, and do you qualify? You can actually do that right from this page with just a few bits of information. We will calculate in real time. You don't have to book a call. You don't have to do anything. We'll calculate in real time how much you are likely to qualify for. And you can even pick which programs you'd like to participate in.
And it's so simple at that point. You're just going to upload a few documents and allow our system to go out and search for those local, state, and federal programs for you. And then within the system, it's simple, it's easy. You can access it and see what you qualify. And you can do that on the go or at your desktop.
Yeah. So we've just given you a way that you can calculate your benefit, but we can offer something that none of these pop-up providers can. Because we've been in business over 20 years, we have physical presence in all 50 states. So if you'd like, we can drive to you, we can come meet you and shake your hand face to face.
And that's the tax management system. It's where you can track and claim all your available tax credits immediately. And we'd love for you to take an opportunity to see what you could qualify for.
Well, it's time to get started, and the place to do that is right on this page. Go down, calculate right now, and see what your business qualifies for. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to working together.